Build Network Conversations, where we speak with founders, CTOs, and senior technology leaders about how modern teams and technology is actually built. Today, I'm joined by Clayton Fox from Cubic, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you, Clayton. Thanks for taking a bit of time.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Now, it's Tech Build Network, Clayton, so I'm going to dive right in and just say, what have you been building recently that's been taking the most of your attention?
It's been so much that we've involved in. Really, with AI, it's changing the landscape of what we're doing, how we're approaching problems. So I would say it's not one area. It's that real balance of trying to keep up with the latest trends, and sifting through the hype and what's actually worth investing our time in. So it means you spend an awful lot of time having to research what's actually usable and what's the right approaches, and then bring those back to your teams, and then figuring out how to roll that out to them and get them to adopt it.
Nice. And it must be interesting for your time management, Clayton, because you've got all your normal duties that you've probably had for the last 10 years. And now you've got almost like R&D that you need to do to see how you're going to work going forward. How are you balancing everything?
I suppose, because the classic challenges of reliability and delivery and scalability, they don't go away. It's just like an extra layer on top, where everything now is through that lens of AI. So I mean, going through it's I suppose walking the dogs in the evening is a great time to catch up on podcasts. Or when you get a few quiet minutes, going through the latest tech blogs. But I think as well, we've formed a small AI focus group within the company, and it's really great because instead of having to try and do all this yourself, which is a huge task, all doing this and going to our podcasts of choice or our articles of choice, and then bringing it back and having a daily discussion where we kind of debrief each other really helps get a huge amount of information without absorbing all of our time.
Yeah, that's great. And how does that work in terms of logistics? Do you meet them daily? Is it weekly? Do you have Slack channels for the sort of in the moment stuff? Because that kind of thing is something that other leaders will be looking at, but maybe they haven't taken the step yet of setting up a
we treat it like a virtual team, so it's no different to one of our dev teams. Okay. So we do a daily stand-up. We do have our own team channel around it where we're sharing links and articles and tips, and I suppose even things that the engineers have shared with us, and then that gives another avenue for more information.
Nice. And it was probably one of my questions for later, but we've dived straight into it, Clayton. And this is all just your opinion, by the way, so you can be honest. So where are you seeing the genuine value from AI, and where is just the hype too much?
I suppose starting with the hype, I suppose it was very much that 9-12 months ago there was and obviously from the AI companies wanting to market the product, how this will be a replacement for engineers in the future, and really what we've seen, that's not the case. It's very much an enabler. It makes engineers go 2x, 3x. I've even heard claims of 10x in some places. And that's really what it does. It enables engineers to go faster and to do more. It is not a replacement for an engineer, or even in some cases where companies feel it's a replacement for engineering decision making. I think it is so critical having that experienced engineer in there at the heart of everything you do. It just, I suppose, takes away a lot of the monotony. So the kind of more repetitive day-to-day tasks that engineers would have to previously do. And it frees them up to really focus on the more interesting things that engineers want to do, and solving the complicated problems and figuring out how to make things better. So when they can focus on that and not getting caught up in the more trivial details that they would have previously do, that's really where you get your efficiencies.
Yeah, and any particular tools? It feels like, and I was at Dublin Tech Summit recently, and we were looking at the quality of all these different models and tools, and it looks like Anthropic and Claude has maybe taken a bit of a leap forward where others haven't, and for the while before then they were all very similar. I don't know, are there any I'm just dropping that one in, but maybe use something different, Clayton?
So we're kind of at that stage in our journey now where it's deciding, is it right to lock into one model, which some companies are doing. Some companies then are still dipping across multiple ones. Now, what we do find with as the models come out, you might get one model sneaks just ahead of the others.
Yeah.
But within a few weeks, the others have caught up. So it's as much of a muchness, I suppose, with the top leading models at this stage.
Yeah.
I suppose it becomes a cultural thing as much within the company, and more what's right for the company and the way the company works.
Yeah, 100%. Has it had any effect on you sort of either investing in junior talent or your time training junior talent? Any changes in that in the last sort of 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, so historically, when we would be hiring, there would definitely be more of a focus to more senior experienced engineers because we've got quite a complex platform. There's lots of interconnected services. We work with networks all around the world. So it's quite a high bar.
Yeah.
And coming in, AI, it has really changed that. What we've seen with our juniors is where, in the old days, you had a junior coming in and they would absorb a huge amount of seniors' time, getting mentoring and asking all the hundreds and hundreds of questions that they have. And I still think that's valuable, having that, because there is no substitute for the battle scars that a senior has built up over the years. But I think a lot of the juniors are now using AI as a personal assistant to help them on their training journey.
Yeah.
And then that frees up a lot of time that would have previously been taken from a senior. So that does help there. It means as well we can focus on bringing in grads, which are fantastic because they bring such energy and enthusiasm into the company. And what's actually interesting is we're really the terminology we're using anyway is that grads are coming in as AI natives.
Mm-hmm.
It is no different to I suppose our generation with mobile phones versus our parents.
Yeah.
It was something that they were so late in life and trying to pick up. Whereas, we grew up with the technology and we're nearly seeing that in the industry where despite being so junior, there's definitely some tips and tricks that the grads are able to show our more seasoned engineers.
Yeah. That's good fun. Even when we hire graduates, a few top people per year, Clayton, putting on a Limp Bizkit song in the office. They're not quite sure, Pokemon reference. What's that? And these guys are going to come in and be even better with all this tech than we are.
Exactly. And it's, I think the other benefit really that we've seen from AI is it's not just about the churning out of features, functionality and writing code, really using it as a knowledge repo. So having like a chatbot that's built up from product and architectural documentation, and it now is able to be queried and asked and give feedback. It's a very different prospect now bringing on a new hire.
Yeah.
Whereas, previously you were, if you were going good, you were talking weeks, but more realistically, it was normally talking months for someone to be really productive. We're now seeing that in days. It's given us that flexibility that we wouldn't have previously had. There was always to move engineers around as well. That's another benefit. So before, an engineer would be in and they'd be well embedded into their domain and you don't want to touch them. Now we can look and say, okay, well, what are our high priority projects and where do we actually need the extra resourcing? And moving someone in, and within a week or two, they're up and running, they're committing code, and they're just as productive as someone who's been on the team for months. So that's a real game changer, and not something that we've been able to do in the past.
That's brilliant. Look, we've been quite tech focused in our conversation so far, although of course there's always a people element, in terms of just pure people, what's one belief as a sort of manager that you hold in terms of building a team that you believe in, but maybe others would disagree with, Clayton?
So I suppose the two pillars that I hold up with any of the teams I run are trust and accountability. Okay. And I think they go hand in hand, and that's so important. I think you need to have that trust, that I need to trust in them and they need to trust in me. And then that once you have that trust established, that brings accountability, because you want someone to be able to hold their hand up if they don't fully get something, if they don't understand something, or if they've made a mistake. Yeah. That definitely is a lesson I learned from the past, where you send an engineer off on a project and they're like, yep, I get that. And then you see 6 months later what's delivered and you're like, that's not what I asked at all. So I think ensuring that flow conversation and being able to be open and honest about everything is really critical for a healthy, productive team.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, do you think it's, we had a really interesting discussion when we first started talking, Clayton, about the adverse effect that AI can have on, I suppose, hiring, in terms of, it's being used by candidates, it's being used sometimes by companies, which creates, a slightly negative candidate experience. So there's pros and cons of everything. Do you think we're any further on in that, Clayton? Has it made your life easier or more difficult?
I think we've had to evolve the hiring. So, it's become a bit of an arms race, I suppose, in the hiring process. So I know you see a lot of articles online about the ATS systems that are filtering out candidates before they ever get to speak to a human. So that's maybe one area where that is a problem, because there's good talent and they're losing out for maybe reasons that they don't understand. But I think, even when someone's getting the interview stage, as we talked about in our previous discussion, that they can come out sounding like an expert, and it's just really a memorized script. So we actually had an interesting one. We had a grad hiring fair recently, and we actually got them in. So we did the traditional interview rounds with them, but in addition, we gave them some interactive activities to do. So we set up like an escape room, which was actually really successful.
Nice.
But it gave us a chance to, when they drop the facade you actually get to see real world problem solving, you get to see collaboration, you get to see communication. So I think that it did give us some insights, and it's something that we can look to apply in other areas for different levels of seniority. But I think going with the traditional interview on its own, I'm not as confident of that as a base anymore, because people who are very good at memorization can do really quite well in them, because AI is getting so good at predicting the type of questions that can come up in an interview.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Tied into that, I always ask all our guests here, if you're a junior or a graduate now, Clayton, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them?
I think keeping that constant curiosity is so important, and that strive for learning. You're on that learning journey in this industry, and until the day you retire, you can't stop learning. It's or else the industry will leave you behind. And I suppose as part of that, there's the temptation of grads coming in that, well, AI can write the code for me. Why do I need to learn the fundamentals?
Yeah.
And I suppose I liken that to, you can get in behind the wheel of a self-drive car, but you wouldn't even think about doing that unless you actually knew how to drive.
Yeah.
So I liken that in the software. It's that, the fundamentals are so important, because when you understand fundamentals, then you can make the right choices based on what AI is presenting to you. If not, it might as well just run and go wild on its own without any oversight.
Yeah, totally agree. And look, we always have a feature on the Tech Build Network conversations, Clayton. It's called Ship Happens. I just want to emphasize that's SHIP, as in to ship software.
Yep.
So every technology leader's had a moment where things don't go to plan. I've heard some which are, I would say disaster territory. Others are not as epic. But tell me about a time that ship happened in your career.
I said many years ago, I joined the company, and I was only a few months in, and I was mid-level at this stage, and the senior had left.
Okay.
And without any handover, he left quite abruptly. So I was left holding the bag, and it turned out that his whole day-to-day job was keeping plates spinning just to keep the system going. So after he left, things started to fall apart very, very quickly. So I got stuck into a loop where I had to rewrite the entire production system on the fly.
Okay.
It was an interesting week. I couldn't. I think I was starting at 7 a.m, finishing 2 or 3 at night. I remember actually my boss at that stage, he cycled to work, refused to let me cycle in case something happened to me on the way in. So he would come chauffeur me in the morning and bring me home, and I wasn't allowed to leave my desk in between. He would bring me food to keep me going. So that was a very interesting few weeks. Thankfully, all turned out well, and I would say that I came out a much more massively skilled engineer at the end. It really kind of forged in the heat of battle.
That's like an intensive course, like a year crammed into, a month or weeks even.
Yeah. It was an interesting experience. I wouldn't want to repeat it now, but I think it was good.
It's good to tell.
But I suppose the biggest benefit, and it's really helped me through my management career, then it's always, ensuring that your teams never have to repeat the mistakes you made.
Yeah, 100%. That's interesting. Yeah, great. So don't let any seniors leave if they've got a load of responsibilities, Clayton. That's
it. Chain them all to their desks.
That's it. Well, look, thank you so much. We covered a lot there, Clayton. It's been an absolute pleasure for you to join us. And, there's other leaders, especially I think young managers who look at someone like yourself and what you've achieved and what you bring to the industry. So look, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Cheers. Bye.
All the best. Bye.